Thank you. Delighted to be here. Thank you very much. I would like to present something that we have been working on at the GCRF Action Against Stunting Hub. What we're currently doing is we're trying to come up with a food environment experience metric that can be used in a variety of different contexts. This is very much the consultation phase of the development. So we don't have a final metric to present to you. What we're presenting is really the process and the method and our way of thinking about this. And we would invite any feedback and constructive criticism. There will be a side event later on in the conference where there's an opportunity to engage and participate in the process. This is a UKRI GCRF Action Against Stunting Hub. This particular part is a part of the food systems team, and the metric is being developed in collaboration with the Drivers of Food Choice and with Amana. So just a bit of background to start. The Stunting Hub is this transnational, transdisciplinary institution between 18 different institutions. It's being led by the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. And the food environment metric is really, as a lot of the speakers today have been talking about, there is a need for this, for metrics to measure it and the methods to measure these food environments, particularly with a policy focus. And existing measures have got these context trade-offs between context and scale. So we have really excellent qualitative methods, but they're hard to scale up. And then we have really excellent spatial methods, but they mix a lot of context. And so there's need for a metric that can create that can help design policy interventions. So that's really, our focus really is on identifying levers for interventions within the food system and the food environment. And we wanted to create a metric that is able to characterize populations and whole areas, but also that goes beyond just healthy or unhealthy or just obesogenic, and be able to be flexible for different purposes, for different foods, food groups, dietary patterns. And we also wanted it to be able to show the relative importance of different parts of the food environment in terms of the domains of the food environment, the subdomains, and also including the personal and the external aspects of the domains of the food environment. So the overall real purpose was to create this household level instrument that measured household members' interaction with the food environment, and food environment being this multidimensional construct. And we wanted to focus on that, on the individual's interactions within their activity space, so not just in the location that they live or work. And so we wanted to create a short questionnaire instrument, and it would be a set of unidimensional constructs, each measured by a scale, which can be aggregated into a metric, and it should be quick to administer and easy to integrate into other surveys. As you've heard a lot this morning already, there's sort of you can categorize existing methods into sort of four main approaches. You've got the spatial methods, which could be using secondary data and satellite imagery. It can also be participatory GIS work, which is excellent. All of these methods have got pros and cons, and the spatial methods are excellent for scale, they're excellent for GIS activity spaces, but often the correlations can be weak. And they lack context specificity. With market-based surveys are increasingly common. These are focused on vendor outlets. They might be checklists or inventories or food baskets approaches. And they're great for food prices and availability and identifying promotions and even assessing quality and freshness of foods. But they don't account for the fact that people are quite mobile and that they move between different food environments and can seek out different environments, and that there's some endogeneity there between supply and demand, and that markets are often a reflection of aggregate demand as well as constraints on consumption. So, and then there are questionnaire approaches, and there are some existing tools such as the NEMS-P, which have been designed for high-income countries, but have been adapted for different purposes. And these are quite good. These can really good at identifying preferences and values and priorities, and they can deal with both the personal and the home environment. But they tend to be either quite broad and can identify sort of vague quite specific features of healthy or unhealthy, or they could, if you want to do them for every food or food group, they can become time consuming and repetitive. And then, as we've heard this morning, the qualitative stuff is really, really excellent for detailed contextual understanding, but it's difficult to scale up. So we decided to go for a scale approach using a questionnaire. And there are a number of different approaches, different avenues you could take here. One might be the consumer profile. So you could identify aspects of the consumer. So are they price sensitive? Are they influenced by concerns about food safety? Are they most concerned about convenience? You can have the respondent's perception of the food environment. So that is, can, in the opinion of the respondent, in the own words of the respondent, what is their food environment like? An alternative would be experience of the food environment, which would be measuring interaction with the food environment. How are they using, and how often are they coming across different aspects of the food environment? And finally, there would be the respondent's experience of food choice, which would be sort of self-reported reasons behind food-related decisions. But as we know, health-related decisions are very difficult to measure accurately. So we went for a food environment experience approach, and our approach is really focused around some sort of core features. One is, as I mentioned, we wanted an activity-based approach. So we wanted to recognize that people had different food environments throughout the day, and that different people, according to different livelihoods, moved to different places. We wanted to go beyond a sort of deterministic model of exposure being of environment being destiny in terms of food environment, and look at how people interact, and look at the relative effects of the personal and the external, look at the interaction between the personal and the external food environments. The activity approach also allows us to aggregate by subpopulation as well as location. So it allows us to maybe identify the fact that different groups of people may have different food environments despite living in the same location. And one of the core concepts of our tool is this idea of trade-offs, is that people, when they make food-related decisions, they are trying to balance competing trade-offs that might not be compatible. So for example, they are balancing cost and convenience, or they're balancing time and food safety, and we think that we might be able to find a way that we can quantify the degree of importance of some of these features by the extent to which they create a trade-off with other things. So what we've done so far is we've been through a lot of the literature and a lot of the frameworks that we've already heard about this morning, and we tried to identify a lot of the aspects of the food environments that are important. We also started doing our own formative work. We did some in Indonesia, but unfortunately the pandemic put a stop to some of the others that we had planned. So this is partly what we're going to be seeking feedback from. We would like to, these are very much a preliminary list. Some of these we won't be able to measure. Some of them will need to be split into two. Some of them will need to be merged together. But the idea is to have these unidimensional constructs that we can each measure by a scale. And our measurement approach has got two aspects. The first is the measure of exposure. So what is within the activity space of the respondent? How often or does the respondent encounter this? How prevalent is this property in the activity space? And the second part is this measure of influence. So what we would measure that via the trade-offs between the different values. Sorry. Okay, so to measure trade-offs, just an example of this is that, so for example, there could be a trade-off between the convenience of food and the perceived healthiness of food, or the quality of the cost. And these can be measured linearly or as a threshold. So you can measure it in terms of the extra distance, or the extra time, or the extra cost that is required to get an acceptable level of something, or as a threshold. Does full consideration of quality mean that the cost is prohibitive? So for just a random example, if a particular food, for example, chicken, was widely available within a respondent's activity space, and it was at a price that was affordable to them, and it was relatively easy and convenient to obtain. But however, there's a prevalent view of that some sellers of chicken sell meat that is unsafe or risky or has some risk of illness, then there's two possible effects. One, that might not affect consumption. That might not affect consumption at all. For example, it could be that there are still sufficient vendors who sell safe chicken, that there is no increase in cost or time or distance or inconvenience in chicken.
It looks like some people are not muted. Would you please mute your microphone? We are getting feedback. Sorry about that, Dominic.
No worries.
Not my old one. And please round up for us.
So there's, yes, I'll finish this next, sorry. And then the alternative is that this could have a huge constraint on consumption. It could be that in order to buy chicken that is considered safe or acceptably risky.
Dominic, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me? You can't hear me?
I can hear you, Dominic.
You can or can't?
I can hear you. This is Amos. Richmond, can you hear him?
Yes, I can hear you, yes. Am I still being heard?
Yes, I can hear you from here.
Okay. Yes, it's fine, Dominic. Carry on.
Okay. I'll finish up. Yeah, so we are currently developing, as I say, we're doing this consultation. You please do come to our side event and give us some feedback. Over the next few months, we'll be developing the measures and the indicators that we'll use. We'll construct the prototype questionnaire, and we will do the face validity and content validity testing. And then we hope to pilot test it and then do the analysis and develop it in an iterative process until we have something that is useful for researchers and policymakers. So thank you very much.
Thank you.